Right guys, so back in the garage, had a quick cover. Thankfully that flywheel's off, yes, that's great news, that is brilliant news. So obviously our next job, we get this crankcase cover off. I've already took the bolts out of the gearbox, we've done that while we were waiting over the weekend, just for something to do basically. So we'll pull these cover bolts off, also remove this C-clip, get this washer out the way, and then when it pulls I'll pull it. As you can see, we use the black crankshaft oil seal, supposed to be a bit better than the orangey red type ones. Put these out the way, then we'll pull it with the primary gear so that we don't obviously mark this seal, so it seems in good condition, so we probably won't change it. Right, let's get these bolts off and get the clutch cover off. Hopefully that's not a bad angle for the camera. I don't know if it matters, but I always try and start around the outside and remove the outside and working over. That's one. There's a nice awkward one here on the back of the breather, so that one's a spanner. These are all your 7/16 11mm types. Again, I do like ratchet spanners, they make life a whole heap easier for these hard to reach places where you can't get into the socket. There's nothing worse than them 1/8 of a turn or 1/4 of a turn with a spanner and then having to get the spanner back onto the nut and give it another 1/4 of a turn and take it off, especially when it turns out to be a 6-inch long nut or something ridiculous. Well, bald. 6-inch long nut would be a shocker, wouldn't it? Right, so that's a 3/8 there. Yeah, one of the crankcase bolts, and I have to remember which way it goes back in. For some reasons, ended up being a 3/8. Okay, so that's the ones out at the top. Let's get the ones out the bottom of it now. We'll start where the, doesn't matter where you start. Now I'm starting at the bottom stabiliser. Bolt nearest the sump plug. They're a nervy thing as well nowadays, these sump plugs. It was a few years ago now, we'd rebuilt the engine. We took the car out for a bit of testing to run the engine in. We come back to drop the oil, and with the oil come most of the threads from the sump plug. It was that bad, it was beyond helicoiling, so it was a last minute as usual. Engine out, new gearbox casing, swap all the gears into that casing, and then all back together. Just in the nick of time. Let's hope we can do the nick of time job on this one. Obviously, you've got to remember when you're putting these back together, the aluminium, anything that's going in aluminium in the gearbox casing is going to have a coarse thread. Anything that's going into the cast block is going to have a fine thread. You don't want to get them mixed up, or you will damage the threads on the bolts if you're lucky, and if you're very unlucky, damage the threads inside the box or on your block. That's one that goes into the block, that's see a fine thread compared to the one that goes in the gearbox. I hope you don't see that, maybe if I move it back. But once you fine thread, obviously, so that goes into your cast, that goes into aluminium. Right, let's get the race these off and we'll get the cover off, then we'll flip the engine and see what's going on. As you can see, I'm not a fan of using the impact gun, especially on this lightweight stuff. People with more experience may know better than me and be confident, but I'm not confident to be using a rattle gun on this lighter stuff. It's nervy enough when you're putting it back together. Just using, should be a torque wrench, but 9 times out of 10 I just use feel in your hands as your torque wrench. Obviously not with important stuff like cylinder heads and that, so don't get worried that you know, just ignore torques, because we don't. Right, that should be the last one, but I'll have a double check around, because you don't want to start trying to move it if we've still got a bolt in. And we don't appear to have, so fingers crossed that remains the case. So, a bit of wooden block, protect from a hammer. It's away. Just need to jiggle off its pegs. We'll use a bit of assistance. Find a nice place for a screwdriver to go in. Roughly where we know where's a peg. It's moving, but I don't want the primary gear to come with it. And the primary gear doesn't want it, so I'll have to put some over these splines just to protect this oil seal when I pull it off. I'll have to grab a bit of tape. So we'll hoist some tape on, like I say, over the splines on the primary gear, and that'll protect the oil seal from getting damaged off the splines on the primary gear. attach them splines at the beginning. I don't want to end up with oil leaking on my clutch. Right, there's the cover off. Let's put that one side. You can see we run the straight cut drops. Right, so now it's just a matter of separating this engine from the gearbox. I'm sure I've got all the nuts out, all the bolts out. Well, let's get something in and see if we can prise apart. Well, that was nice and easy. So we'll get a couple of blocks on the floor and we'll get this off and put it onto the floor. Get the gearbox out of the way. Get this into a nice working position. I know I'm asking a bit much in here. We'll step over the camera. Put it on these wooden blocks so we can see the crank. I don't want to stand it on its end because we ain't got an engine standing here. Put the gearbox on one side, so that's going to have to go for a good clean. Oh, definitely. So see if we can see this in the gearbox. Just down in the bottom there, that's our thrust bearings. Or what's left of them, so obviously this gearbox is going to need a real good flushing. Right, see if we can have a look. Here's our crank. I think first thing we need to do is get these main caps off. Again, start from the outside loosening.
Yeah, but that them drawers, them silver drawers, like weird silver mesh to it. You know, the weird stuff.
Okay, I'll grab a socket or two. Right guys, I'm going to cheat here and I'm going to use the impact gun just to spin these off. We'll just put you down a sec. Hopefully we're slingshot. Again, start from the outside. So it's the centre cap that's our main concern, but we'll pull yours off as well obviously, so you get proper access. We'll actually have to get the crank out, which will mean undoing the rods as well. I just want to see how much I can see. Just taking the centre cap out. Go with a little bit of persuasion, I think. Okay. Oh, there's a bearing, don't drop that. So we can see, I'll get it in shot. Bits of our thrust on the centre cap. One of the thrust just dropped out, so have a nose. I'll just put the camera back down again. You'll have to forgive me, I'm starting to work with oily hands and I'm getting worried about how I'm putting the camera up. Right. So the centre main journal actually looks okay, the journal itself. Right, well, me and Tracy had a word earlier. We said with the run of good luck we've had, we were getting a flywheel puller that got the flywheel off. If this crank didn't need replacing, it just turned out to be bearings, we would not put the lottery on tonight. There'd be no point because we've already worn out all our good luck. And looking at this crank, we're safe. On first inspection I'm going to pull it out and have a closer inspection. I'm going to get some new main bearings because these ones, they're not toast, but the centre one, it'd be ridiculous to try running that any longer. I'm surprised it hasn't transferred onto the crank, but the crank doesn't look too bad. It would definitely go polish it to bring it up to, but for what we need, this has got to get us through another 3 hours to the end of the season. Then we can maybe look at having a full engine rebuild then, but until then it's sort of make do and mend. Don't have the time nor the budget to be throwing at new engines at this time of the year. As you can see, that thrust washer, its backing has totally disappeared. The material which you ride on, which you rely on to stop the resistance, has disappeared, and you can see we've started getting a bit of heat in there. Oh, it hasn't trashed the crank, I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the crank a lot closer, I think, before I decide, because looking at the damage on the bearings, I'm finding it hard to believe that this crank is going to be serviceable, but you never know. Right, I'll pop these other caps off, and then we'll pop the mains off as well. That end journal's good, no problem with the end journal. It just appears to be the centre one. I think it's with the heat, I think that's why the centre one's damaged the bearing. Okay. So we'll pull this end cap. I am cheating a bit here. I've left the timing cover plate on, but do remember to take the little, we have them count the sunken hours because we have a duplex timing gear, but there's 2 bolts going to this cap here. So if you're going to leave the time plate on when doing this, make sure you get them bolts out. I'll end up just snapping them in there, and then you've got a whole world of pain, because you've got to get them out here, because you can't just get another cap, because it has to be line bored. No one wants to go down there. Yeah, and that main bearing again is in good condition, so it looks, so far we will need some main bearings, but so far the crank is it's looking good. Right, bring these round to here, so we're more or less level and we can access all the caps, more or less. And we'll start, I'll pull the middle ones out first. I shouldn't really gun them, but I'm going to have to find the 1/2 inch. Not it. Right, bear with us, we'll just have a hunt for a spanner, socket even. Okay, so I had the socket on, we've spun most of the caps off. I've brought it back just to spin the last cap, and then we're going to remove the rod caps, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed. I'll spin these last 2 bolts and I'll start taking them off. Obviously I've removed bolts, 3 nuts again, you know. Anyway, I've put the nuts in orders, to where they'll be going, you know, when they come back off. I've seen them put the rod ends in order. Cap should say, then obviously they're marked up anyway, but then it should make it easy just coming back to it, and we know where everything is, and hopefully it isn't a long time between us getting the bits we need and getting it sorted. Right, we'll spin this last one off and we'll have a look, and hopefully crank will be good. I know a lot of people won't like seeing the windy gun on this thing, but just for the sake of speed, obviously I won't be putting it back together like that. Stick some nuts in there. Well, we've been lucky so far. We've been very lucky so far. This kind of way. Obviously, in my eagerness to get the crank cap off and see where we were, I should really got these off first. Gives you a bit more leverage. Again, that one's good again. I'll just bring these two round. That one's popped its cap for me, which is very kind of it. Right, let's get these put in the rightful place. Right, the shell didn't come off with that one, so let's have a nose, see what we've got. There's the rod out number one. So we've got one cap to get off. So far all the mains are looking lovely. No problem. Sorry, yeah, the mains aren't looking too bad. And the big ends as well. So we've just got to get this cap off and then we know where we are. Yeah, that cap's come out, that bearing's fine. So now we're going to want everything to cause this hassle where it can. And pull out that and the compression. It's very low down. It's going to make me take the end plate off. Hey ho, end plate left one off. So it's going to whip the cam timing. Cam thrust plate off, sorry. That's the little triangle one with the three 8 nuts holding it in. I was asking a bit much really, you know, leaving the end plate on, but I was hoping, just as a bit of a shortcut. rust out of the way. Let's get this end plate off. That's nice. Pull this gasket out of the way a bit. And get it sit on the other side of the crank. There we go. Nice, get this crank out. Yeah, we can see a bit where it's been moving around. I'll take the glove off just so I can run my nail across the face and see what it's like. There's a bit of discoloration in one of the faces, but it doesn't seem to be grooved.
Cover my elbow.
Okay. Get some of the shell out of the way. Yeah, so if we look at our centre main journal, we can see it isn't in the greatest of conditions. But at this point our engineering is, can we get away with it? Put some new bearings in. There is this little bit of discoloration. We don't have no pitting and no serious grooves. So I'm thinking what we'll be doing is measuring up for new thrusts, some new thrust bearings. Take this bearing out, I'll show you something on this bearing. That's how much a crank had been moving over. You can see it started exposing the copper. There's this top's been wore away, that's where the crank's been moving over and sliding onto it, and everything starts binding up. Right guys, let's check the faces in the block. Again, face in the block looking fine. So I think we'll call that a video, shall we? Pull these other two thrusts out. There we go again, that one, it's just nothing on it. Corresponding side. Obviously that wasn't the side that failed, so right. Obviously they're all bin fodder now. So next video I'll be getting this bad boy back together, and what I'm going to have to do, I want to find out thickness of my thrusts, see if that's changed at all. So I've got some thrusts there which are the same thrusts, the same size that I ran. I'll have to put them in and then check the crankshaft for end float. So I'll probably just run with the cap bearings that we've got here for now. So I'm just checking for end float, so but I'll get some mains on order. But we'll have to see about these thrusts for and order them, so that'll be my next job today. I'll get the get the crank back in with the thrusts, measure it up and see where we are. Obviously the crank will have to come back out, so it'll need new main bearings in it. It won't see the end of the season with the centre main bearing that I've took out of there. Like I say, the crank's showing some discolouring, but honestly there's no grooves in it. Yeah, it do a regrind or a polish at least, but for our time scale, we're halfway through the season, we're just going to keep our fingers crossed for this one. The faces of the thrusts don't look too bad. There's a very, very small groove right on the outside. Hopefully that'll not affect us, hopefully. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video when hopefully we'll be all full of good news and putting this thing back together and getting it ready to go back in the car. Again, that gearbox, nasty, needs a good clean. Also another thing that'll need sorting out, oil pump. I've not seen any traces of it being pumped round. That was obviously a nightmare. That would have lost material and it had got into our oil ways, gone into the crank, ruined the crank, ruined the cam, ruined the whole shebang. But it hasn't, we're all good, so obviously we'll pump off. Check the pump, if the pump's fine, you know, if the clearances work out and it's of intolerances, then we'll keep the pump. There's no point binning it because a lot of the pumps nowadays, the tolerances aren't great. So if you've got one that works, keep all of it. So as long as the tolerances are right and you can all be measured. Anyway guys, stop rattling on. I'll see you guys later on. Hope you all enjoy yourselves. Stay out of trouble. Bye for now. See you later.